We're going to begin our show this morning on Capitol Hill, where Republican senators appear to be brushing aside concerns over Pete Hegseth's fitness to be the next Secretary of Defense.
Yesterday, President-elect Trump's pick to lead the Pentagon met with a group of Republican senators amid recently emerged allegations of sexual assault and alcohol abuse. Hegseth, a former Fox News host, has denied any wrongdoing. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now from West Palm Beach. Vaughn, good morning. So what happened at these Capitol Hill meetings, and just how much support does Hegseth appear to have from Republican senators as these allegations swirl around him?
Yeah, good morning, guys. These meetings are not exactly coronations where there is abundant, clear support for these nominees that Donald Trump intends to put forward. But instead, it's going to take that simple majority for each of these nominees to pass through the Senate come January and February during their confirmation proceedings. And that's where you saw Pete Hegseth up on the Hill after two more damning allegations and articles came forward over the course of the weekend, in which there was a New Yorker piece that obtained a whistleblower report from his previous veterans organization that he had once helmed back from 2013 to 2016, in which he was alleged to have engaged in sexual misconduct as well as financial mismanagement and repeated intoxication. And that is where there's some serious questions for these particularly Republican senators who could still be on the fence and have not committed to voting for him yet, the extent to which they will seek through the approval of his confirmation process. I want to let you listen, though, to Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, who, after meeting with him yesterday up on Capitol Hill, suggested that he intends to move forward with him. Take a listen.
We need a drill sergeant in the military. We need somebody to straighten the military out, to get the woke, the DEI affiliation out, and go from there.
And you don't have any concerns about the allegations against him in the New Yorker article, sir?
No, I've looked at all the personal stuff, and again, I've known him for a long time, and there's not going to be anything to this at the end of the day.
There's not going to be anything to this at the end of the day. Tommy Tuberville indicating that he intends to go full steam ahead with supporting Pete Hegseth's nomination. But on the other hand, there's another Republican senator, Roger Wicker from Mississippi, who suggested yesterday to NBC News that he wants a full FBI background check to go through into Pete Hegseth before he were to vote for his confirmation.
Vaughn, let's talk about another pick here. This one for Attorney General Pam Bondi. She was making the rounds on Capitol Hill yesterday. We saw she met with Senator Chuck Grassley. That's important because he'll be the incoming chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. What came out of her meetings, and after what happened with Matt Gaetz, how likely is it that she'll earn the nomination? Where's support at for her?
Right. She also met with Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And as of right now, compared to the likes of Pete Hegseth and, of course, Matt Gaetz, who has already stepped aside, who was Donald Trump's initial attorney general pick, she is being much more welcomed and received with an extent of warmth and embrace by the Republican caucus up on Capitol Hill. Of course, she's going to still have some serious questions, and she's going to have to answer to. In 2020, she was out on the campaign trail in the aftermath of the election, suggesting that Donald Trump actually won the state of Pennsylvania when that was not actually the case. And the other question that she's undoubtedly going to face during those confirmation proceedings next year is the extent to which she would seek to prosecute perceived enemies of Donald Trump's, particularly with the likes of Kash Patel being nominated by Donald Trump to be the FBI director.
And, Vaughn, we're also learning President-elect Trump is going to be heading to Paris this weekend for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. It's his first overseas trip since winning the election. Tell us about that. And is a meeting with France's President Macron a possibility?
Yes, this is, for Donald Trump, going to be his first overseas trip since, of course, winning the presidency, but also he didn't travel overseas at all during his 2024 campaign. And so for Donald Trump, so far he has seen multiple, foreign leaders come to Mar-a-Lago over the course of the last months, from Hungary's Viktor Orban to just over this weekend, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came and had dinner at Mar-a-Lago. The new NATO Secretary General was also here in West Palm Beach to meet with Donald Trump last week. These foreign leaders understanding the importance of building up this relationship with Donald Trump on the outset. But he is going to be going for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, which nearly burned down 5 years ago. And of course, the question is the extent to which he may meet with President Macron to ensure that there is relation between the United States and our ally France.
Right. Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, thank you so much.
We want to turn now to the latest in a leadership battle that's brewing among House Democrats on Capitol Hill. So Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin, a former constitutional law professor, is vying to unseat the current top Democrat on the powerful House Judiciary Committee. That's Congressman Jerry Nadler of New York.
In a letter announcing his candidacy, Raskin, a cancer survivor, said the Judiciary Committee will be the headquarters of congressional opposition to authoritarianism and MAGA's campaign to dismantle our constitutional system. I hope to be at the center of this fight, and as someone who has battled cancer and chemotherapy, I can tell you that I will never, never surrender.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, good morning. So it seems like this makes some sense, right? Democrats sort of trying to regroup in the wake of their election loss to Donald Trump, and this being a piece of that. But tell us why this particular role on the House Judiciary Committee is so important, even with the House in Republican control.
Well, the Judiciary Committee, as Raskin rightly points out, is one of the key epicenters. What you get when you have gavel control in the House is you get subpoena power. And so for someone like Jim Jordan, James Comer, we've seen what they've been able to do with that subpoena power over the course of the last 2 years. I would argue they were not able to drill down on the investigations front in the way that they had hoped, largely because they were never able to find any there with the things that they pursued. But certainly we've seen some of the promises that Jordan and other Trump allies have made of what they're going to do with the gavel now that they continue to keep it. So for Raskin, he was the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, sparred with James Comer, the head of that committee, for the last 2 years. And now he's looking to make his way over to the Judiciary Committee because, as he says, it's the epicenter of the so-called MAGA movement. Jordan, of course, a very long-time Trump ally. And so we're watching Raskin try to make his way to be the top Democrat on that committee. It might make sense to everyone who's not in Washington or in the Capitol every day, but I cannot stress to you guys enough how rare it is to see Democrats be challenging the senior members of their party for these plum committee chair assignments, or in this case, the ranking member assignments. The difference between Democrats and Republicans in the House is Republicans term limit the people who head up their committees. Democrats do not. There's a whole number of reasons for that. But the fact that we're now seeing not just Raskin challenging the senior member, in this case it's Jerry Nadler of New York, not just Raskin challenging him, but then also seeing other committee chairs be challenged or pressured out, it's really stunning, and it's sort of the sign of a new age of doing things, new way of doing things potentially on the Hill.
Yeah, so Ali, what else are you watching then?
Well, the fact that we're also seeing Congressman Raul Grijalva, who is the longtime committee chair of the Natural Resources Committee. He knew he was going to be getting his own challenge from younger members. He, yesterday, in a letter that I obtained to his colleagues, also said he was going to step aside. And so we're watching in this instance the fact, and I'm just dialing back into you guys because I lost you, but we saw him step down. We're seeing this happen at other committee levels because as we watch this Congress turn over, we are also now watching the committee chairman's turnover along with it.
Ali Vitale, thank you as always.
Nearly a month has passed since Election Day, when more than 150 million people across the country voted in the presidential race. And now that nearly all the ballots of the 2024 election have been counted, we do have a clearer picture of the accuracy of the polls, both national and battleground polls, during this cycle.
Yeah, according to the Pew Research Center, this year's national polls turned in one of the best performances in presidential polling in decades. But this morning, we're taking a look at what those polls got right and where they might have missed the mark. We've got NBC News senior political editor Mark Mark Murray joining us with more on all this. Mark, good morning. Always great to have you with us.
So let's start with what the polls got right. You now say that beyond signaling that the 2024 presidential election was competitive and uncertain, the polls nailed the political atmospherics that shaped the contest. So let's look at that. The final NBC News polls had President-elect Trump, Vice President Harris in a dead heat race right up till Election Day, like so many other polls. About a month later, what do we know?
Yeah, Joe, the polls got more right than they ended up getting wrong. And you ended up looking at our own final national NBC News poll that showed a tied race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris at 49% each. The real clear averages nationally were in that same ballpark. And again, the final result, Donald Trump was a little bit more than that. Kamala Harris was a little bit less. But given a lot of the past misses that we've seen in presidential elections, particularly going back to 2020, this was a much better performance for the polls. And is also mentioned, the atmospherics got right. President Biden was unpopular. You ended up having a super majority of the country who think that the nation was headed in the wrong direction. Those were some of the big, broad stories that the polls were telling before the election, and that turned out to be the case.
Mark, now let's talk about the opposite and kind of two things here, where polls did get things wrong, but then also what factors lead to sort of like the perception that polls were wrong.
Yeah. So, Savannah, as I mentioned earlier, once again, Donald Trump's support was a little understated. Certainly not as what we ended up seeing in 2020 and 2016, but he ended up outperforming his polls. But to me, and when we look at our own NBC News poll, maybe the biggest miss was that size of the overall gender gap. We were talking about a historic gender gap. And what it turned out to be was this was kind of almost the same gender gap that we've seen in past presidential contests in 2016 and 2020. Now, where there was a gender gap was when you end up adding education to that, college degrees. And that's where we ended up seeing a wide educational gap between men without college degrees and women with them.
So, Mark, if there's one number that explains why we saw what we saw, I think it's this. The NBC News exit poll found 73% of voters say that they were either angry or dissatisfied with the country's direction. Mr. Trump swept the battleground states, winning all 7. Felt like a surprise at the time, but that persistent dissatisfaction, that was key in the final result, right?
Yeah, Joe, I actually think that was the whole ball game. And, usually you end up having a president winning re-election or a presidential administration winning re-election when people say, hey, you know what, good times are here again. It's morning in America. Things are on the right track or at least are getting better, like what we saw for Barack Obama in 2012. But with 73% of voters saying that the country that they thought the country was heading in the wrong direction and they were dissatisfied, made it very difficult for Democrats to keep control of the White House.
Mark, for viewers who, just want to know more about how this all works, how we make these polls, what we'll do differently, how does this information impact and help poll gurus like yourself better prepare for the next round of election polling? Do any changes come after one of these?
Yeah, Savannah, one of the big lessons that we were telling at NBC News throughout this entire cycle was that polls aren't precise instruments. That if you get a number that says it's one candidate's at 50% and another candidate's at 49%, that one candidate at 50% isn't guaranteed to win. In fact, all that we know about that kind of result that it's close. And the polls did tell us about the atmosphere. They told us this was a very close and uncertain race. And that's kind of the extent to what polls can do.
Mark Murray, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, President Biden is making history as the first U.S. president to visit the southern African nation of Angola.
Mr. Biden arrived Monday on a mission to promote American investments in the region. He'll also be showcasing an American-backed multi-billion-dollar railway project and announcing several global health and security initiatives.
NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist is traveling with the president and joins us with more on his visit. Aaron, good morning. So President Biden is scheduled to meet with the president of Angola today. Walk us through some of the highlights of his agenda for this 3-day trip.
Yeah, the president really is here to highlight the work that his administration has done, particularly in Angola, really for the entirety that President Biden has been in office. This gathering today with the president of Angola, Joao Lourenço, is an opportunity for President Biden to sit down with his counterpart here. And I should note that they are right now at the presidential palace here in Luanda, having this bilateral meeting, talking about trade opportunities, talking about security cooperation opportunities, talking about infrastructure that the Biden administration has spent so much time, resources, intellect, and money investing in here in Angola. In particular, you referenced the Lobito corridor. That's about an hour flight away from here. The port is, and that's really an area where this rail project has been invested in to the tune of upwards of $3 billion just here in Angola. This railway actually stretches into the Democratic Republic of Congo and touches Zambia in some ways, and will ultimately, the hope is, stretch from one ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, to the other, the Indian Ocean, and be a way for these countries that are rich in minerals to be able to get those resources to the port faster. Now it can take sometimes weeks to do that. The hope is that it would be able to be something that can be done in a couple of days to get those resources to the markets around the world more quickly, and it would be something that would help the economy here, obviously in Angola, but economies around the world as well, guys.
So, Aaron, with just a few weeks left in the White House, it is notable President Biden is prioritizing this visit to sub-Saharan Africa right before the end of his term. Just what's the overall goal, and where does China fit into all of this?
You asked a good question about China. We know that China is a country that has been investing billions of dollars across the African continent for the better part of a decade now. It is a country that owns mines, for example, in the Democratic Republic of Congo as a result of some of the work that they've been doing here. They've got business relationships with Angola as well. And so it sort of looks as though the Biden administration, as well as other Western nations, are sort of playing catch up here, not necessarily, though, trying to push China out of the market. We just spoke with the president's spokesperson from the National Security Council about this very question of China. I want you to hear a little bit of his response.
What we're focused on, honestly, is, again, improving our bilateral relationships here on the continent, improving the lives and livelihoods of all Africans, because we know that improves, as I said, the global economy. This isn't a race with another country. We're not asking other countries to choose between the United States and Russia, the United States and China.
And so we also heard from John Kirby and other senior administration officials that the effort here is not necessarily to push China out of the market, but to say to these African nations that the United States is coming to the table with better options, with higher standards for production, with assurances that child labor won't be a concern by using American companies and by working with the United States to develop some of the economic opportunities that could exist here in Angola and in neighboring countries as well, Joe and Savannah.
Aaron, the U.S., through all of this, is committing $3 billion to some of these projects, that railway project, for example, other investments there. Do we have a sense of what the future of these projects will be under the incoming Trump administration? Will it be a priority?
Yeah, that's a question that we've asked several administration officials, and the consensus seems to be that there's not a great concern. Obviously, the Biden administration can't speak for the incoming Trump administration, but there seems to be that there's not a great concern that the Trump administration would come in and try to undo so much of the work that's been done with Angola up until this point. There's a belief among administration officials that the economic benefits of working with Angola are ones that were, some of them were established during the first Trump administration. They've been enhanced and advanced by the Biden administration, and the belief is that the incoming Trump administration would be one that wants to continue to see these economic opportunities grow here in Angola and across the African continent.
Aaron Gilchrist traveling with the president for us. Thank you very much.
Now to the powerful winter storm making its way across the Great Lakes and Northeast, bringing several feet of lake-effect snow.
Yeah, this morning officials are trying to help people who have been stuck inside their homes since Friday, as forecasters are calling for another round of severe weather to hit the area.
NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is in Erie, Pennsylvania, joins us with the latest. So, Aaron, you're in western Pennsylvania on Lake Erie. They're used to getting a lot of snow. They're used to sometimes measuring in feet, not in inches. So tell us, how much snow are they getting? Any impact there? Are folks even mildly disturbed by all this snow?
Hey, Joe, they're shocked. You know, as you mentioned, they are used to getting a lot of snow in this part of the country, but the sheer amount of snow that fell in a short period of time is shocking, folks. I was speaking to one resident here in Erie, Pennsylvania, who said for the first time she was snowed in. She said that when the snow started to fall, she said she thought it was a normal storm. Every 2 hours, she said her timer was going out and shoveling the snow to make sure she didn't get snowed in. But she said she reached a point where it just got to be too much. She went to open her door and it was stuck. She stayed there for 3 days, surviving on Thanksgiving leftovers. She said she's never seen anything like it. We were out yesterday with county officials as they were making wellness checks, going from house to house, receiving calls from elderly folks who also couldn't get out of their homes. One man, 75-year-old Navy veteran, needed oxygen or relied on oxygen. And this is really a life or death matter for him. We watched as a county executive personally went and dug his way out of that home. So some really shocking scenes in this region. Yes, they're used to the snow, but just not this much and that fast.
Saying something in a place where people set their alarms to shovel every 2 hours and they still can't keep up with it.
Kidding.
All right, Aaron, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And for more on this first significant blast of winter, let's take a closer look at your morning news now weather.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And that snow is still falling today. We're going to see some heavier bands tomorrow as well, with a clipper system coming in. That's going to reinforce those snow bands, especially downwind of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. So no surprise, once again, waking up to winter alerts. 6 million people impacted. We have lake effect warnings. That's in that aqua blue color, winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. That includes the UP and Michigan as well. Notice it includes parts of Maine and also parts of New England, because we are looking at that clipper system bringing some higher elevation snow. So let's take you through the next couple of days. Today, we're going to see those cold winds still blowing over those warmer waters. Again, the waters are in the upper 40s, the low 50s. That's going to enhance that snowfall because the waters are so warm with that Arctic air flowing over it. And then there's that clipper system that's going to move through. That's going to bring new snow to the upper Midwest, and we could see some accumulating snow in spots, especially in the UP and Michigan. By tomorrow, the snow moves into the interior Northeast. You see a little bit of rain mixing in some spots, and we will see that enhanced snowfall, the bands over those Great Lakes. So we still have accumulating snow to come over the next several days. Thursday is going to be a slick day, snowy and slick travel for most of New England, and a cold rain likely near the coast because we have that chilly air in place, and it's going to stay chilly for a few days, at least for this week. Now, snowfall totals, notice all these pinks and purples. We kind of always point that out because that translates to the higher amounts. So we're looking at higher amounts along the lakes. Once again, the higher elevations of New England into Vermont, New Hampshire, also Maine, and then notice into Michigan and the UP and Michigan. That includes the lower peninsula as well. It's a chilly start in the southeast. Once again, we had freeze warnings yesterday. We're starting out with freeze warnings. Once again, we have a freeze watch for tomorrow morning as well, because temperatures are chilly this morning, and we will stay cool as we go throughout. Most of the East Coast will stay cool with that jet stream so far to the south. There are those temperatures right now below freezing in some spots, and that's in Florida as well. Now, this is interesting. Some chilly, some mild. We have that jet stream in place. Notice it's dipped so far to the south still. That opens the door to Canada, letting all that Arctic air in. So we're looking at temperatures, once again, 5, 10, 15 degrees below normal for this time of year. To the west, so look at that jet stream lifted to the north. So now we're getting that southerly flow. The warmer air is mixing in, and we're going to be the opposite, 5, 10, 15 degrees above normal for this time of year, temperatures in the 50s. And we're going to keep it cool tomorrow, guys. It's chilly. I mean, if you're out walking, we're looking at, you can feel that chill, and it feels a little bit chillier once that wind blows.
Does that warm weather ever make it to us?
It seems like it's blocked.
It's stopping.
Right? It's like,
okay.
No, you stay there.
There's a wall. Got it. All right.
It's pretty cold this morning.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.